Mr. Secretary, if I could ask you a question just a little closer to home. Yesterday, President Trump terminated trade negotiations with Canada. Have you spoken with Foreign Minister Anand? What can Canada do to resume these?
Well, I think what happened is one of the leaders in Canada was running ads in the United States on tariffs that took President Reagan's words out of context. Even the Reagan Foundation criticized him for it. But I have not spoken. I've been traveling since yesterday. But I have not spoken to the foreign minister since then. But I mean, the president made his announcement that he suspended any trade talks with Canada for now.
The United States has abruptly ended all trade negotiations with Canada, citing a controversial television advertisement as the cause. President Donald Trump called the ad egregious behavior aimed at influencing U.S. court decisions on tariffs. The controversy began when a Canadian ad featuring former President Ronald Reagan criticized tariffs on foreign goods, linking them to job losses and trade wars. Ontario Premier Doug Ford confirmed that the ad had caught President Trump's attention. Trump alleged the ad was fraudulent, costing $75,000, and intended to interfere with decisions by the U.S. Supreme Court. President Trump announced via social media that all trade negotiations with Canada are hereby terminated due to this interference. He emphasized that tariffs are crucial for U.S. national security and economic interests. Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney responded by reaffirming Canada's commitment to diversify exports outside the U.S. He warned that Canadian industries, autos, steel, and lumber face threats from U.S. tariffs.
Very good. We'll see. We're ongoing discussions with the Americans, and I wouldn't overplay it. I'm looking forward to see the president at APEC in Korea, but we're going to be seeing lots of other countries, and one of our core elements of our strategy is diversifying trade. That's why we're going to Asia. You saw the Indonesian trade deal. We're in talks with ASEAN, which is a group of countries that I'm meeting with in Kuala Lumpur, and then more broadly at APEC, including with China.
During Canadian Prime Minister Carney's visit to the White House, U.S. President Trump and Carney held a bilateral meeting to discuss trade and tariff negotiations. Trump praised Carney, saying, "I would let him represent me," and called him a great leader. Listen in to President Reagan's radio address on free and fair trade on April 25th, 1987.
Begin a trade war. So next week, I'll be giving Prime Minister Nakasone this same message. We want to continue to work cooperatively on trade problems and want very much to lift these trade restrictions as soon as evidence permits. We want to do this because we feel both Japan and the United States have an obligation to promote the prosperity and economic development that only free trade can bring. Now, that message of free trade is one I conveyed to Canada's leaders a few weeks ago, and it was warmly received there. Indeed, throughout the world, there's a growing realization that the way to prosperity for all nations is rejecting protectionist legislation and promoting fair and free competition. Now, there are sound historical reasons for this. For those of us who lived through the Great Depression, the memory of the suffering it caused is deep and searing. And today, many economic analysts and historians argue that high tariff legislation passed back in that period, called the Smoot-Hawley Tariff, greatly deepened the Depression and prevented economic recovery. You see, at first, when someone says, let's impose tariffs on foreign imports, it looks like they're doing the patriotic thing by protecting American products and jobs. And sometimes for a short while it works, but only for a short time. What eventually occurs is, first, homegrown industries start relying on government protection in the form of high tariffs. They stop competing and stop making the innovative management and technological changes they need to succeed in world markets. And then, while all this is going on, something even worse occurs. High tariffs inevitably lead to retaliation by foreign countries and the triggering of fierce trade wars. The result is more and more tariffs, higher and higher trade barriers, and less competition. So soon, because of the prices made artificially high by tariffs that subsidize inefficiency and poor management, people stop buying. Then the worst happens. Markets shrink and collapse, businesses and industries shut down, and millions of people lose their jobs. The memory of all this occurring back in the 30s made me determined when I came to Washington to spare the American people the protectionist legislation that destroys prosperity. Now, it hasn't always been easy. There are those in the Congress, just as there were back in the 30s, who want to go for the quick political advantage, who risk America's prosperity for the sake of a short-term appeal to some special interest group, who forget that more than 5 million American jobs are directly tied to the foreign export business, and additional millions are tied to imports. Well, I've never forgotten those jobs, and on trade issues, by and large, we've done well. In certain select cases, like the Japanese semiconductors, we've taken steps to stop unfair practices against American products, but we've still maintained our basic long-term commitment to free trade and economic growth. So, with my meeting with Prime Minister Nakasone and the Venice Economic Summit coming up, it's terribly important not to restrict the President's options in such trade dealings with foreign governments. Unfortunately, some in the Congress are trying to do exactly that. I'll keep you informed on this dangerous legislation because it's just another form of protectionism, and I may need your help to stop it. Remember, America's jobs and growth are at stake. Until next week, thanks for listening, and God bless you.
We're going to be talking about trade. We're going to be talking about a lot of different things.
For you to drop or lower your tariffs on Canadian sectors in the United States.
Well, we're going to be talking about that with the Prime Minister. We'll be talking about tariffs. We'll be talking about a lot of that, but that's for a little bit later on.
Why has Canada and the United States failed to reach an agreement up until now?
Well, it's a complicated agreement, more complicated maybe than any other agreement we have on trade, because, we have natural conflict. We also have mutual love. We have great love for each other. I love this. I love Canada and the people of Canada, and Mark feels the same way about here. The problem we have is that they want a car company and I want a car company, meaning the U.S. wants a car company, and they want steel and we want steel. And, so in other countries, they're very far away, and there's no problem. You can compete and you can do. We don't like to compete because we sort of hurt each other when we compete, and so we have a natural conflict. It's a natural business conflict. Nothing wrong with it, and I think we've come a long way over the last few months, actually, in terms of that relationship. So when it comes to trade, the United States was always giving everything. They gave everything to Canada. They would let car companies leave here and go to Canada. But that hurts the United States. And, other presidents didn't see that. They weren't business-oriented. They might have been good politicians in some cases, not in all cases. They were bad at both. But it's a very natural conflict, and it's something that we're working out.
Are you willing today to offer some compromise to Canada, maybe on steel and aluminum?
We've made compromise, and we've made some compromise even on steel. But, we have the same basic authority and the same basic, this could be also a little bit of a conflict with other countries all over the world on steel, because we want to make our own steel. We don't want to bring steel in for the most part, but we will bring it in, and we do bring it in. We continue to bring it in from Canada, but there is a tariff to pay.